Have you ever thought about how a nation can totally reinvent itself? I mean, really, truly transform. We're talking about a country of medieval warriors becoming a global industrial superpower, all within the span of a single human lifetime. It sounds like science fiction, but it actually happened. This is the incredible and frankly violent story of Japan's race into the modern world. So let's just frame this. In 1853, you have Japan as a feudal society. It's run by samurai, and it's intentionally completely sealed off from the rest of the world. Now, fast forward just 52 years, that's it, to 1905, and you have a military giant with a modern navy that has just beaten a major European empire in a war. So the big question is how? How on earth did that happen? How did Japan pull off one of the fastest, most profound transformations in all of human history? To really get this incredible change, you have to understand the world it completely erased. For hundreds of years, Japan was like a society frozen in amber, deliberately locked away from everybody else. This policy had a name, Sakoku, which literally means locked country. And for more than 200 years, the military government, called the shogunate, made sure that almost nobody got in and nobody got out. The idea was to keep their unique feudal society, with its rigid structure and samurai warriors at the top, perfectly preserved. And it worked. It created a long era of peace inside Japan. But here's the catch. While Japan was looking inward, the West was having its industrial revolution, and Japan was getting left dangerously, dangerously behind. And then, one day, the outside world didn't just come knocking. It basically took a cannon and blew the door clean off its hinges. Japan's long, quiet era of isolation was about to come to a very shocking, very abrupt end. That shock arrived in 1853. An American, Commodore Matthew Perry, sails right into Tokyo Bay with a fleet of these huge, steam-powered warships. The Japanese had never seen anything like them. They called them the Black Ships. They were puffing smoke, and they were armed with cannons that made Japan's traditional defenses look like toys. Perry's message was blunt. Open up for trade or else. The technology gap was just overwhelming. The shogunate had no real choice but to sign these deals that became known as the unequal treaties, which basically forced the country open on the West's terms. You have to understand, for the Japanese people, this was a massive national humiliation. The government that had been in power for over 250 years was shown to be completely powerless. This single crisis lit a fuse. It kicked off a brutal civil war, and in the end, the old samurai government, the shogunate, completely collapsed. The stage was set for a revolution. And what rose from those ashes was the Meiji Restoration. Now, this wasn't just some new government. Oh no, this was a frantic, top-down, national mission. The goal? Catch up to the West by becoming like the West, and do it as fast as humanly possible. And pretty much every single decision they made from then on was driven by this one slogan, Fukoku Kyohei, enrich the country, strengthen the military. The logic was brutally simple. They looked around Asia, saw their neighbors being colonized, and said, not us. To stay independent, Japan had to get rich, it had to industrialize, and it had to build a military that could go toe-to-toe with the Western powers. And the changes they made were just breathtakingly radical. The new government didn't just reform the old system, they tore it down. The entire feudal class system, gone. I mean, think about that. The samurai class that had ruled Japan for centuries was abolished. Just like that. They created a new army based on the German model, where every able-bodied man had to serve. They wrote a whole new constitution, and the government itself started pouring money into building factories, railroads, and shipyards. They were remaking their whole society from the ground up. And the speed of all this was just staggering. Let me give you one example. In 1872, Japan had a grand total of 18 miles of railroad track. 18. By 1900, less than 30 years later, they had nearly 4,000 miles. This wasn't just about getting from point A to point B. This was the steel skeleton of a brand new industrial nation being built at a mind-blowing pace. Okay, so Japan has a modern economy and a powerful military. What's next? Well, in the late 19th century, if you wanted to be in the big leagues, you had to act like a global power. And that meant one thing, building an empire of your own. Their first major test was against their giant neighbor, China. Now, on paper, China's army was way bigger, But the Japanese army was a direct product of the Meiji Restoration. It was modern, disciplined, well-equipped, and ruthlessly efficient. This was Fukuoka Kyohei in action. And the result? It was a shockingly quick and decisive victory for Japan that absolutely stunned the rest of the world. And beating China was just the start. Japan gets its first colony, Taiwan. Then it signs a military alliance with the biggest power on the planet, Great Britain. And then comes 1905. Japan goes to war with the massive Russian Empire and wins. This was the moment. This was when Japan truly arrived on the world stage. For the first time in modern history, an Asian nation had defeated a major European power. But with this new status came a really dangerous kind of confidence and a growing hunger for more resources and more territory. But this meteoric rise to power, it came at a terrible price. The very same nationalism and military obsession that built the new Japan would soon lead it and the entire region down an incredibly dark path. Japan's imperial ambitions, now fueled by an aggressive ultranationalism and a desperate need for resources for its factories, just kept growing. They seized Manchuria from China in 1931. By 1937, they were in a full-blown invasion of the rest of China. And in December of that year, their armies stood at the gates of the capital city at the time, Nanjing. What happened when the city fell is still one of the most horrific episodes of the entire 20th century. For weeks on end, Japanese troops went on a rampage of murder, torture, and assault against the people of the city. Now, historians still debate the exact figures, but the most common estimates say that hundreds of thousands of unarmed civilians and surrendered soldiers were killed. The dream of strengthening the military had twisted into a nightmare of pure, unrestrained brutality. So what do we make of this? The story of Japan's modernization is absolutely staggering. It's an unbelievable case study in national will. But it's also a really powerful and very dark cautionary tale. And it leaves us with a tough question, one that's still relevant today. Can any nation race that fast toward power and strength without, somewhere along the way, losing its moral compass?